All right, my friends, we are ready to start. Most of tonight's class is actually going to be based on the sheet that I sent out earlier, which is based on the Yalkut Yosef. Goes through all kinds of different laws of Maaseh Shabbos, benefiting from Shabbos labor. But before we get to that, I want to finish the seif that we started, which is the second seif of Shin Yud Ches in the Mechaber, and then the corresponding seifim in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, which is 5 and 6. And then we will go to the Yalkut Yosef, as I mentioned. Okay. Hashochet b'Shabbos l'choila. Go back to the beginning of Beis. A person who shechts on Shabbos for a sick person.
Where are you reading this? 318?
318.2, not in the Alter Rebbe though, in the Shulchan Aruch of the
regular one.
You go to sefaria.org and you go to Shulchan Aruch, you go to Orach Chaim and you go to 318, you'll find it there. And the Alter Rebbe we'll get to in a minute. Okay, so Ashochet b'Shabbos l'choil, the person who shechts on Shabbos for a sick person. Bein shechol me'asma, bein shechol hayom. Whether the sick person was became sick yesterday or today, and the reason he says that is, like I mentioned last time, that if he became sick before Shabbos, then there's more reason to be lenient, because the person already maybe had his eye on that animal, that he would shecht it if necessary. Now, he didn't shecht it before Shabbos because A, he didn't know if it would be necessary, and B, they didn't have refrigeration in those days. So the best way to preserve an animal is to keep it alive, and that way it's fresh. So he did not shecht it before Shabbos. And but here it says, no, even if it was sick from before, even if he got sick on the day, nevertheless, mutar habar lechem mimenu chai b'Shabbos. The healthy person is still allowed to eat from it on Shabbos raw. And we explained last time, even though it was muktzah when Shabbos began. And there is a concept in the laws of muktzah, which goes as follows: Kivan shehoktzah lebein hashmashas hoktzah lechol hashabbos kula. When something is set aside when Shabbos begins, which is bein hashmashas, the beginning of Shabbos, then it is automatically set aside for the entire Shabbos. So take, for example, a candlestick.
Siman. You're talking about designating.
318, Shin Yud Ches.
You're talking about designating.
Exactly. If you take a candlestick and you put a candle in it, so you make the candlestick very muktzah, because it's supporting that candle. Candlesticks may be muktzah anyway, but maybe not such a serious muktzah, maybe less serious. Now it becomes a support for this candle. So you'll say, well, okay, it's a support for the candle. The candle's only going to last for a few hours, and afterwards let it go back to being less muktzah. No. Since when Shabbos came in, it was designated for that level of muktzah, so it retains that level of muktzah for the entire Shabbos. The same thing for that matter, if you take fresh fruit and you put it on your rooftop to dry it out, you want dried dates or whatever else you want to dry. That's what they used to do in the olden days. So it was good food when it was fresh, but now you're setting it aside and you're saying, no, I don't want to eat it fresh. I'm going to wait till it dries. So when you put it up there, and when Shabbos came in, if it was still up there and it was still in the process of being dried, Shabbos morning you come up and you see, oh, now it's reached the stage that it's good. It's ready for eating. No, can't eat it. Because when Shabbos came in, it was put aside, it was separated, you had decided not to eat it, so it retains that status the entire Shabbos. However, the difference is, over here, you did not set it aside. It was simply muktzah because it's in a state of automatic muktzah. See what I'm saying? It just, animals are muktzah, that's all. But meat is not muktzah. And when it goes from being an animal to being meat, it's not muktzah. Actually, the truth is, that Eitan was saying yesterday, a good point, which is in Hilchos Muktzah says that raw meat is muktzah. because it's basically
You
not
can't
edible.
use it, yeah.
So anything that's not edible, food that's not edible is muktzah, by the way, very important. Potatoes are muktzah. Flour is muktzah. Any non-edible food is muktzah. So what's the deal with meat? So the answer is it depends. If you are the sort of person that eats raw meat,
Then it's not.
then it's not muktzah. Because
So it's
for
a
you,
subjective standard?
that is a subjective standard. Usually it's not like that. Usually it's either muktzah or not. But there are some things that depends on the person. Like, for example, small little rags. Rich people throw them out. Poor people might use them for a patch or something. So there it depends on who you are. So this is also like that. Raw meat is muktzah for a person that does not eat raw meat, but it's not muktzah for a person that does eat raw meat. So this person obviously eats raw meat because that's what he wants to do here. So the point is that when it goes from being an animal to being meat, it changes its status from muktzah to non-muktzah, and that's not a problem, because when Shabbos came in, it was not set aside. It was simply an automatic muktzah. You didn't have to set it aside to be muktzah. It was automatically muktzah. Now there's going to be a contradiction to this from something later, with fruit on a tree. We'll discuss that soon. Okay.
But if something's muktzah,
Yep.
a pen, you can't designate a pen, right?
Depends.
Anything for Shabbos.
Maybe it's a paperweight
Right, a
paperweight
dollar
or
bill.
something like that, right?
A pen is muktzah, but it's a very low-level muktzah because it's called a klisha malachta le'isr. It's a utensil that has its main use is a forbidden one, but it's not an expensive thing, so you wouldn't hesitate to use it for something else if you needed to. So that's not a high-level muktzah. That is like you did designate it to make it. The person who manufactured it, not really you, but whoever manufactured it, made it into a pen, which is a muktzah item. So it was set aside. So I don't think you could change its status in the middle of Shabbos. If you decide that you want to take this pen, and instead of using it as a pen from now on, you want to use it as a back scratcher, for example, I don't think you could change that status on Shabbos, because it was set aside to be a pen by the person who made it. But at the same time, it is a very low-level muktzah. Like, you could use a pen as a back scratcher on Shabbos, even without designating it as such, because you're allowed to use it. The only thing it's muktzah for is basically if you want to move it for its own sake. If it's on a place that it's going to get stolen or ruined, you want to move it out of that place, that's what it's muktzah for. But if it's in your way, or if you have a personal use for it, it's allowed.
Does it make a difference if the designator is a goy?
Somebody's here. A voice speaks from the computer. Who is this? Yosef, go ahead, yes.
Does it make a difference if the designator is a goy?
How can a goy designate something for?
You mean the person who made the pen?
Right.
I don't think so.
That's its general use.
I don't think so. Question?
Yeah, not to go off topic here. Something that's 100% for certain. Like, could a person designate a donkey, let's say, to lead a person that needs to be led on Shabbos? Like nowadays, it would be like, I guess, like a
Guide
dog,
dog.
a guide dog, or
Seeing eye
something like
dog.
that.
No, that doesn't change the fact that it's an animal. Live animals are muktzah no matter what you designate it for, because they are still live animals. You understand? You can't change it from being a live animal. That being said, for the purpose of a person who's blind, you know what I mean? The person who's blind, it's like he's dead, it says in the Gemara, you know what I mean? So for him to be able to function, it's actual pikuach nefesh, but it's, it's close. It's a great need, you know what I mean? That's, sorry?
If you go to that side of his house, it could be.
Yeah. I don't know exactly how to categorize it. but-
Service animal. That's what they
Actually, you know what? If I'm not mistaken, the way Shlomo Zalman explains the heter for seeing eye dogs is based on categorization. He says that there is an opinion that says when you designate a live animal as a pet, so it becomes like a toy. Instead of being an animal, it becomes like a toy. It's a live toy, but it's a toy, and it's not muktzah. Now, we don't rely on that because it's only one opinion. It's not the main halacha. We don't rely on it for regular pets, but a seeing eye dog, because of the great need, we'll rely on that opinion.
So what do people do with their pets over Shabbos?
They don't have a dog.
They don't hug them. They don't.
Walk them.
No, they can walk them. They just can't move them. You know what I mean? You can't push them.
But the animal leads the person.
The animal leads the person. Yes, that's okay.
Why is that okay?
That's a slippery
Because
slope.
That's
you're not moving it. It's moving. You're even allowed to hold it by the leash, but it has to be an air, because without an air, it's very complicated.
And then when it pees on the grass,
It's no problem. Even a person can pee on the grass.
Shabbos.
Yes, because
It's not
that
getting any
that
nourishment.
doesn't exactly. It's
Doesn't get any.
acidic or whatever it's called. It doesn't.
Yeah.
It's not considered
Also, a
like
form of
water.
destruction then? You'd be destroying on Shabbos.
All right.
I thought the general
Not
rule we couldn't
significantly.
own dogs was because if a dog
You
barked,
said you
the
can't own dogs.
A woman
when I
becomes
first-
scared?
yeah, because a
Pregnant.
woman would become scared and have a miscarriage.
Depends
That's
on the
why
type
I
of
That's
thought
not a
dog.
Shabbos issue.
Depends on the type of dog. If it's a
woman
pit bull,
could be scared of a
if
poodle.
it's a pit bull, yes,
You
but
see
if it's a
cockroach,
poodle,
you get scared. Yeah.
Yeah, but that has nothing to do
Cockroach,
with
yes,
Shabbos,
poodle
that
not.
halacha.
Poodles are pretty aggressive.
a dangerous dog or a dog that's scary, yes.
My wife, when she came from Canada, had never even been around dogs until she saw my mother's dogs. And my mom has the Chihuahua, little one. She was scared.
Anyway, the halacha is that if you have a dangerous dog, you just have to keep it chained up so that the person who sees it won't be afraid. But if it's chained, it's no problem. Rabbi Werbman owns a dog for safety, and the Lubavitcher Rebbe owned a dog.
Really?
Yeah,
For safety?
for safety.
In his apartment?
No, in his house. Lived in a house, and his wife was a lone orphan. You know, they had a dog. They kept it in the back. I don't think it was kept in the house, but had a dog.
Kept in the backyard.
I thought he lived in an apartment on President Street.
No, he started in an apartment on New York Avenue,
Yeah.
and then moved to a house on President Street.
Oh, so it was the house where you.
Yeah,
Saying like a kufa, or you always constantly loving the dog?
I don't know about
What
constantly.
was it called?
It was a German Shepherd. I don't know if it had a name. I have no idea.
Come on, that's a good trivia question.
I have no idea.
At the calm sound.
Yeah.
No, that would be.
That I
No, we
don't
don't need
think
a
so.
third layer of controversy.
I don't think so. All right, my friends. We continue and we say, oh, and like I said last time, you're not allowed to salt meat on Shabbos. That's
So
considered
cooking.
like cooking midrabanan, because salting of the meat, prepares it for eating. That's like a tikkun,
And also heats it in a certain way, right?
Right.
We learned that in Bas Brachala.
Yeah. correct? But nevertheless, when it comes to eating raw meat, you actually don't have to salt it. You just have to wash it off. When you have to salt
To draw out the blood.
meat,
Because of blood. What's the time limit on eating?
no time limit. What do you mean?
It's ready to eat.
What do you mean?
If you shut an animal.
Yeah.
What's the time limit where you don't have to salt?
If you're eating it raw, you don't have to salt it. There is no time limit. You just wash it off and eat it. I'll explain.
Like a fruit.
The reason is as follows. The reason is as follows. Blood that is in the limbs of the animal, as opposed to blood that like in a pool, like for example, the blood that spurts out when it's shechted, or the blood that's in the heart or in the jugular, like the big veins where it's pooled. As opposed to that, if the blood is just in the small capillaries of the different limbs of the animal, so that blood is only forbidden if it separates from its place. When it moves around, then it becomes forbidden. But if it stays in its place, it's not forbidden. So when you cook it, it's going to move around. Even when you roast it, it's going to move around, but usually it's going to move out and it's not going to stay in, but you still salt it a little bit. But when it comes to eating it raw, where it just stays in its place, it's actually not forbidden. Yes.
Wow. So it doesn't matter if you kept it raw for 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be good,
Not
but
gonna be good.
yeah, if you freeze it, if you refrigerate it. There's a thing about after 3 days, you can't salt it anymore. The blood doesn't properly come out when you salt it after 3 days. You have to roast it instead of cook it. So that's all good and fine if you have to salt it.
So
But
why
if
do
you
we
can
salt?
eat-
Because most people eat it.
I mean, who eats raw meat? I don't know. Steak tartare, maybe.
Nobody eats meat 3 days fresh.
So you salt it before the 3 days are over.
So the butcher's already salted the meat?
Nowadays they salt it even before it gets to the butcher. They salt it back at Agri in
That's
Iowa
interesting.
or wherever else. The individual butchers used to salt it, but that's when the slaughterhouses were closer or whatever.
We lived
Nowadays it's
next
different.
door in Skokie. We lived next door to a kosher butcher.
In Chicago?
Yeah, his house. He was a neighbor, so he would bring stuff home. In those days, that was the early '60s. They didn't salt.
Yeah,
you salted at home.
Salted at home, yeah.
It was chefed, it was clean, whatever, but you salted at home.
Yeah,
It didn't come pre-salted.
that was the standard in those days. Every Jewish housewife was expected to know how to salt.
My grandmother's with the board and all that, right?
Yeah, exactly. Kosher salt and everything.
She put salt in everything.
Okay,
Now the women they don't want to know that it used to be an animal. They want to know they get it at Kosher Kingdom or something.
yeah.
Kosher Kingdom wants them to know that too.
Exactly, with the yellow bottom,
Yeah.
container. They don't want to know it. Used to be on the front.
Avala mavashal. I also sham alach lechayla. Also b'Shabbos lebor lechayla shem esakon had chayshinu shema yarbe shvit. However, person who cooks or does any other malacha for a sick person,
Yeah. That was,
yes. Hi.
that's off.
David says it was kept outside the president's street behind the house. That's correct.
And the name?
The name, we don't know. Mystery. Okay, but a person who cooks or does any other malacha for a sick person, Aser b'Shabbos lebari, it is forbidden on Shabbos for a healthy person. Oy l'chol shem esakana, for a sick person who is not in danger. The chashinu shem yam b'shvile, we are concerned that the goy may add for the Jew. The goy didn't do anything wrong. He cooked for the sick person. And he didn't add for the Jew. But if the Jew would be allowed to eat from the leftovers, we're afraid that next time I'll add for the Jew. Which is, by the way, the same halacha if the guy cooks for himself. I mean, you have bishul akum issues, but let's say there's no bishul akum issues. Let's say he's heating up water, for example, right? So he heated it up for himself. Why can't you have some water? No, if you would have water, and he knows you, don't want to go that knows you. If he knows you, and he sees that you're having some water, so the next time when he heats it up on Shabbos morning, he's making himself a coffee. Oh, he'll add more for you. So that's the same thing here. Now, what about bishul akum? Where does bishul akum come in here? Well, there's one thing you could say, well, maybe it's just actually, before we do that, let's just read the first line of the Ramah, because until now we're talking about a Jew who cooks for a sick person. But here the Ramah says, "Afilu bishul al yedei goy asur b'Shabbos." Even if the cooking was done through a goy, it's asur on Shabbos. Sorry. So the previous case was when the Jew cooked it for another Jew who's deathly ill. So another Jew cannot benefit from it. We're afraid that Jew will otherwise add. Now, why would he add? It's Chil Shabbos. Yeah, but people don't realize that it's Chil Shabbos. In other words, if you're cooking anyway for a sick person, you might think it's not so bad if I throw in an extra piece for somebody else. Like somebody said yesterday, who was it? Maybe Yosef said yesterday, Hutra. Hutra, there's a concept of a Hutra that when a person is sick and you're allowed to desecrate Shabbos for them, it's not that it's Shabbos and it's really a problem, but we're allowing you to do it. No, Hutra means it's completely permissible. It's as if it's a weekday. When you're cooking for a sick person on Shabbos, it's the same as if it were a weekday. Everything okay?
He doesn't want Gimel on the Siman's dollar.
Yeah? It's as if it's a weekday. So the person might think, well, so what if I throw in some extra meat? That's not correct. It's a weekday for the work that you're doing for him, not for any extra added work. Now, I do want to point out there is a machlekes rishonim about when you're cooking in a permissible way and you add something for somebody else. There's a machlekes, it's brought down in the Ran, if it is an Isser Mid'Oraisa to add for somebody else or not. It's definitely Isser Mid'Rabbanan. But it's a machlekes on Isser Mid'Oraisa. Meaning to say, I have a pot. I didn't put it on the fire yet. And it has 2 pieces of meat in it, and that's what the sick person needs. If I put another piece of meat in it, and then I put it on the fire, did I do a Torah violation? In other words, and the third piece is for a healthy person, or for a person who's sick but not dangerous either one. I put it on the fire. Did I do a Torah violation or not? On the one hand, I didn't do any extra action. Same action, picking up the pot, put it down on the fire. On the other hand, within this action,
But
I didn't need everything in it.
For a not so sick person. You should have just designated all for the sick person.
But I didn't, because I know that he doesn't need it.
And then-
And he's saying that he needs it is not going to make him need it. So he actually does not need it. There's no chance he's going to need it on Shabbos, and therefore the third piece is definitely not for him. You don't have to designate it for anybody. It's just not for him. So the point is that some say that's a Torah violation. Just the fact that I'm doing more, even though it's the same action, that's a Torah violation. So according to that opinion, it's simple why we say don't benefit even if he didn't add, because next time he may add, and if he adds, that's a Torah violation. Now some say that it's only a rabbinic violation if he adds. So if so, you can ask, can make a double decree? Don't eat it this time because next time he may add. And what if he adds next time? Just a rabbinic violation, big deal. Excuse me, so the answer is that we're afraid he may add after it's on the fire. He puts it on the fire with 2 pieces. And then he remembers, oh, my friend wanted some steak too. I'll just throw in an extra piece. So that's for sure an Issur D'Oraisa. That's for sure a Torah violation. Doing a separate action of cooking just for the non-sick person. So that is the issue. And as we said, that applies to a Jew who cooks for another Jew who's deathly ill. Now we're adding, even if it's a goy who cooks whether for a deathly ill person or for a seriously ill person, the same thing applies. I don't know if we spelled it out yesterday or last time we learned, but we do have to spell it out, that a goy is allowed to cook or do any kind of Torah level work for a person who is seriously ill, even if he's not deathly ill.
Even if he's asked directly?
You're allowed to ask him directly. That means seriously ill is defined as a person who is bedridden, person who has the flu, person who has a very bad cold, or certainly a person who is, with a more serious illness, and he's bedridden. So that is a situation where you're allowed to have a guy do whatever he needs. Sorry? No, even Torah level. Yeah, cooking, whatever. Or Torah level Shabbos violations. All right? Torah level Shabbos violations.
Is the only person who's anyone's allowed to ask, or?
That's an interesting question.
For this person, yeah.
You don't have to
Like it doesn't have to be a doctor.
No. Doesn't have to be, no.
Is loss of limb seriously ill or deathly ill?
Seriously. Unless the loss of the limb will endanger the person's life. If it won't, then it's not deathly ill, it's seriously ill.
Is there a difference there?
Between?
What would be the difference between deathly ill and seriously ill?
Yeah.
What's the
difference is, can a Jew do work for him?
Oh.
A Jew cannot do work for seriously ill, only for deathly ill.
But does it say that you can blow up a candle for a sick person?
That's if he's deathly ill.
What?
He needs to sleep.
For a Jew.
For a Jew, yeah.
You're allowed to ask, but what about? the
Yeah,
candle, or even
goy,
the
you
non-candle?
Yeah.
He can do it himself.
What the sick person can do.
No, the Jew can do it.
If he's deathly ill. He's deathly ill. Okay.
But the sick person can't do it himself. The non-seriously, the
No.
non-deathly.
He's Jewish.
Yeah.
Shabbos applies to him too.
If someone's deathly ill, how can he eat meat? How can he even chew? Why is that even an issue?
Maybe he's.
I came across a headline today that somebody died today from a bullet that was shot 67 years ago or something like that. Ever see that?
Stuck inside of him.
Stuck inside of him, and he was paralyzed. He became a preacher because he was partially paralyzed instead of working on the farm like his whole family. And he died today at the ripe old age of 70-something. And when they did the autopsy, they decided that the death was caused by that bullet. And he'd say, without the bullet, he might have lived till he was 102. Who knows?
Or not? I mean, how do they
That's
know
what they
it's from the
decided.
70,
How do they know?
77?
And you have to ask the medical examiner. He decided that it was the bullet that killed him. So the point is, when we say deathly ill, we don't mean he's on his deathbed. We mean he has an illness that is dangerously ill to the point of that he might die from it. And whatever, the doctor says that this is something that will give him strength. Maybe he's not going to eat a steak. Maybe he'll eat meat broth. You understand? The broth, healthy, the iron, whatever. Like there were typhus. Typhus has to do also with malnutrition, doesn't it? I know the typhus is an illness that happens a lot when people don't eat. I mean, it's a disease, but it's associated with not eating enough. In the Second World War, and around that time, whatever, there were people who were told by doctors from Jews they had to eat lard. They had to eat lard because they had typhus. They needed a lot of fat, or even margarine, just to eat margarine, butter, you know what I mean? That sort of thing. So sometimes it can be, depending on the illness, sometimes that's necessary. Okay. So, the imkatzat peiros mina mechuber. Oh, actually, you know what? Before we continue, I just want to point out. What is the heter? Person who is seriously but not dangerously ill. What is the heter for him to eat the food cooked by a goy when that food is bishul akum? Food is cooked by a goy. Bishul akum. Now, a person who is not dangerously ill is not allowed to eat non-kosher food, whether it's not kosher by Torah law or by rabbinic law. Yes? Person who is dangerously but not deathly ill, for example, cannot eat chicken meat with milk, a cheeseburger, or what else is the Rabbanan?
Yeah, but that's if it's cooked together, not separate. You can still eat them together, but cold.
Who said?
You're not cooking them together.
So what?
What can you do?
Chicken and milk.
Chicken and meat together, not together for cold.
Yeah, if you're not cooking it together.
I mean, you for sure can't. You're saying maybe if he's sick, he can. I don't know. I don't know if it's true. It's still Asad
No.
Rabbanan?
Yeah, but you're saying that if a goy makes it though.
No. I'm stepping back
Cooking
from
is
the
a separate-
goy,
Oh,
I'm
man.
and I'm saying,
Cooking is a separate form of basar b'chala. Yes, sir.
No.
He said, what's the difference between cooking it and if it's cooked?
I thought chicken was separate too.
chicken is the Rabbanan, and if it's not cooked together, it's also the Rabbanan.
Right.
But I don't know that if you have that combination of not cooked and chicken, that it's any less in terms of a sick person eating it. I don't know. I don't think so. Anyway, my point is, stepping back from this particular case, but talking about in general, a seriously ill person who is not dangerously ill is not allowed to eat non-kosher food, even if the level of non-kosherness is only rabbinic. For example, chicken and milk. Or for example, no?
Anything rabbinically asar.
Anything rabbinically
Fish
asur?
cooked with,
Fish is sakana.
cooked with dairy.
No, fish is sakana. It's different. It's not, it's considered dangerous.
Stam yenam.
Stam yenam. Yeah, stam yenam. Wine touched by a guy who did not actually pour it to idols. Yeah, that's an example.
Mesa.
Actual chalavakum. Actual chalavakum.
Pasakum?
No, pasak was more lenient. Okay, so the question is, or bishalakum for that matter. Bishalakum cannot eat food cooked by a non-Jew. So what's the point of allowing the non-Jew to cook for this person if he's not going to be allowed to eat the food? It's going to be bishalakum.
Maybe the light was late by a Jew before.
Maybe. Will only help for Ashkenazim, not for Sephardim. But anyway, the answer is no. The answer is that when it comes to Shabbos and a person who is seriously ill, the Chachamim allowed him to eat bishul akum. And the reason is because they said
It's harder to find a Jew to cook.
it's impossible to find a Jew to
Does-
cook. There's no way for a Jew to cook. During the rest of the week, we say we're not going to allow you to do the Sissa D'Rabbanan. Find a way to not do the Sissa D'Rabbanan. Have a Jew cook it. But here, where there is no way around it, and after all, he is dangerously ill, and it's only D'Rabbanan, the Chachamim were lenient with him. And they said, under the circumstances, since there's no choice, you can have this food, even though it's Bishul Hag.
It's the Rabbanan versus a Dioraisa. So the Dioraisa would be a Jew cooking it, obviously. But Bishulakum
Yeah,
is
of course.
obviously more lenient.
Of course, there's no question that a Jew is not allowed to cook it. That's not even a question.
Right.
Because it's a D'Oraisa and it's a Shabbos violation, whatever. That's even a question. The question is, can he have this or can he have nothing? That's the question. It's not a question, can he have this or can he have what a Jew cooks? The Jew can't cook. That's not an issue. The question is, can he have this or have nothing? The answer is, he can have this. During the week, we'll say there's another option. So have the other option. But on Shabbos, when this is the only option, they allow it.
Can he kill an animal to make the meat or not? It already has to be done.
He's not,
The goy
we're
can't
talking
kill
about
the
a person
animal.
who is not seriously ill. He's not dangerously. He's only
We're
seriously
talking
ill.
about on Shabbos cooking. You said that it's permissible. 'Cause there's
For a
no one else
goy
to
to
cook.
cook.
But the
So,
Goy can't chef the
But I'm
animal.
asking, can a goy check the animal?
The goy chefs the animal, it's not kosher. Torah level, not kosher.
So-
And a person who is seriously but not dangerously ill will not be allowed to eat it.
What if the Jew's standing over?
What?
The Jew standing over.
Shechita of a non-Jew is in the way. Makes no difference if a Jew is standing over.
Why don't I have it in our mind? that
Get it out of
What
your
if there's
mind.
nothing else to eat?
Even if you're standing over and make sure everything's perfect?
Absolutely not.
Maybe that's tzitzis?
Tzitzis maybe.
So what if there's nothing else to eat?
Definitely not shechita.
What if there's nothing else to eat?
I'm sorry?
What if there's nothing else to eat? Can he eat something that's not kosher?
If
But
he
that's
is
not?
if he's dangerously ill, then yes. If he's only seriously ill but not dangerously ill, then no, he'll be hungry. Like somebody asked me yesterday in the middle of the fast, what if I'm very hungry? I said, that's what a fast is supposed to be like. There's no problem with being very hungry on a fast.
Does the doctor have to say he has to eat this type
Yeah,
of
that's
food?
what it's good. Who
Yeah,
makes that
that's-
determination?
What if it's just a Jew?
You're talking about if he's dangerously ill or seriously ill?
Dangerously ill.
Does the doctor have to say?
He said he's on his deathbed.
Is it a subjective, again? Is it
Generally, when it comes to any violation for the sake of a sick person, yes, generally it has to come from a doctor. If there is no doctor available, then you have to use your common sense. But generally, yes, to do forbidden
Can you
action,
Google
you
on
have to ask the doctor. Okay, so I'll share with you the machlokes Ra'ah and Rashba, just to keep things exciting.
Oh, this is exciting.
And this has to do with the Jewish people crossing the Jordan River. There's a machlokes in the Gemara. if the Jews were allowed to eat meat when they were in the desert, other than the sacrifices, other than the karbonos. Because if you read the pasuk in Parshas Re'eh, it says when you're going to cross into the land, and you're going to be far from the Mishkan, and you're going to want to eat meat, don't worry, you can eat meat. You can shecht it and eat it. Meaning, say, even though it's not a sacrifice, it's okay, because it's a big land, you know what I mean? You can't come to Yerushalayim every time you want to have a steak. Okay, you can shecht. So how was it in the desert? Some say in the desert they did not eat meat unless it was sacrificed, because it was close. So that was the rule. You had to bring it to the Mishkan, you sacrifice it. Part went to Hashem, part went to the Kohanim, and part went to the owners. Fine.
So for the quail.
Right. Except for quail. Correct. It's machlekes of quail if that needs shechita, but that's true. I mean, birds in general, if it needs the rice or shechita or not. Okay, so here's the thing. Some say no. I think it's Rabbi Shmuel. It's machlekes Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Shmuel says no. In the desert, they didn't shecht. They just killed the animals. They didn't have to shecht them. They could shoot them or otherwise kill them in any other way. It was when they came into Eretz Yisrael, that's when the rules of shechita happened. The question is asked, according to Rabbi Shmuel, if when they crossed the Yarden, they had leftovers, they had some Big Macs, what did they have to dispose of them as soon as they crossed the Yarden? Or, it's already...
Let me guess, if they were dangerously ill and that's the only food left, they could eat it?
No.
It's too much.
Actually, it says no. It says because it was mutter, it stays mutter. It's not logical to say that this thing was mutter, it was permissible, all of a sudden it became forbidden. It's not logical. So based on that, the Ra'ah says, this food that is bishul akum, right? Food is bishul akum. But we allow the seriously ill person to eat it on Shabbos.
Anyone can eat it.
You can still have it.
He or anyone else?
Not only that, the Ra'ah says, but anybody can have it. Because if it's permissible, it's permissible. The Chacham aren't going to give it like half permissible, a little bit permissible for this person, but not for that person. If they said it's not bishul akum, it's not bishul akum. Finished.
So to go back to your initial question with the pot and that extra piece of meat, then after Shabbos, anyone can eat it? If it was left over?
The extra piece they could have after Bechdei Sheyasa, after the amount of time that it takes to cook it. Like any time a Gentile cooks for a Jew. Okay, so the Rashba disagrees. And the Rashba says, no. Actually, this meat was bishul akum all along. Even on Shabbos was bishul akum. They allowed this person to eat it. They didn't take off the status of bishul akum. They allowed this person to eat it while it was still Shabbos, because there was no choice. As soon as Shabbos is over, neither he nor anybody else can eat it.
Why can't he continue to eat it?
Sorry?
Why can't he continue to eat it?
Because it was a special allowance, because he had nothing else to eat and no way to eat any nourishing, warm,
So now he
hot
can have a
food.
Jew make it for him.
Now, exactly. After Shabbos, can have a Jew make it for him. That's it. Give the leftovers back to the guy. Let him enjoy it.
What if it's a poor person?
Nothing to do. Poor people have to keep kosher too.
No, I understand. But if that's the only food he has, he's severely ill, he's going to die. You're
He's going to die. You can do whatever you want. Okay. So, if he's going to die, you can do whatever you want. Otherwise, he has to keep the laws. Okay, ve'im cuts that's parents man achomer l'choyde b'Shabbos. Afilu hoya choyde meboed yoim. Also l'boy b'Shabbos mishum shegodal v'hoylech b'Shabbos v'yesh be mishum muktzah. All right. Here's a very interesting thing. What about a fruit? The doctor prescribed a fruit. They used to believe in natural medicines. Some people still do. The doctor prescribed a fruit,
Lemon.
so they cut it from the tree. Is a person allowed to eat the leftovers?
The sick person or the regular person?
The regular person. Sick person can, of course.
Logically, if you say it before, it's when it's allowed, it's allowed. So in this case, it's the same. So Chachamim cannot say that something yes allowed but halfway. If they allow it all the way.
No. No. We never said that the food, see, there we were talking about a kosher issue, right? If it's bishul akum or not. The Chachamim said it's not, okay, so it can't be for one person, yes, for one person, no. Here we're not talking about a non-kosher food issue, we're talking about a Shabbos issue. Understand? There's a Shabbos issue. It was cut on Shabbos.
It's the same thing.
Now, perhaps it's muktzah, perhaps it's not. If it's muktzah, it's forbidden for other people to have it. Even though for this person it's permissible, it's muktzah, but he can eat it anyway because he's sick. You understand? But if it's muktzah, then nobody else can eat it. You understand what I'm saying?
I'm going to say the same
Shabbos
thing.
after Shabbos, of course.
If he does it and he eats it, he's going to do it the next Shabbos. He's going to he's going to become accustomed, just like with the cooking.
So here's the answer to that. Listen carefully. When it comes to shchita, if you remember, we said he can scoop some meat out of the animal and eat it raw. But when it comes to bishul, we don't let him because he's going to add. Okay? So listen carefully. What's the difference between shchita and bishul? Why do we let him have some of the animal when it's shechta? We don't let him when it's cooked.
Because then he's going to cook on Shabbos.
So maybe he'll shecht on Shabbos. We explained this last time.
Oh,
Remember.
because it was it was expensive a lot. They don't do it. People don't kill their animals. It had something to do with the value of the animal. People don't eat that much meat.
Who remembers?
You said it 2 classes
Take
ago.
a bigger animal. An animal's big.
An animal is one action of shechita for the entire animal. You can't shecht more of the animal or less of the animal. So therefore, we're not going to decree, don't eat from this animal because next time, what's he going to do next time? He's going to shecht 2 animals? He's not going to shecht 2 animals. He's not going to shecht a bigger animal because how much can a sick person eat already? You know what I'm saying? So the same thing when it comes to a fruit. We're not going to make a decree. He's going to do a separate action of cutting another fruit off. You understand? It's not like the pot where in the same pot you can cook more or less. You understand? When it comes to a fruit, it's one action of cutting the fruit. To say he's going to cut a separate fruit, that's already a separate action. We're not going to make that decree. Nevertheless, there is still a muktzah issue. What's the muktzah?
Squeezing it?
No. Here's the muktzah issue. Mishum shegodal v'hoylech b'Shabbos. If the fruit grew on Shabbos, it wasn't ripe when Shabbos came in. It was growing, so it's muktzah. What kind of muktzah is that? Who knows the halachas of muktzah? What kind of muktzah is
something
that?
that was born.
Exactly.
You said it with the egg.
Exactly. That's like noiled. That's like something new. When Shabbos came in, the part of this fruit that became added to it was not a fruit. It was a nutrient in the ground. It was rain in the cloud. You know what I'm saying? It was carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, whatever it is that goes into making a fruit. And on Shabbos, it all came together and went into the fruit and became part of it. So that's muktzah.
So why is it that we're allowed to create on Shabbos?
We are not allowed to create on Shabbos.
No, I mean,
Make babies, that's Hashem's. That's what Hashem does. How is Hashem allowed to do it? It's a good question.
When we say
Shabbos, but I don't know. Yes.
Don't we say animals are also gedulei karka because they get their nourishment from like the grass?
Therefore,
So they also feed off the grass during Shabbos. So there should be a nolad issue. It's the same thing, right?
that's an interesting question. Why is the animal not nolad? Because it grew on Shabbos, so to speak.
It's already a full animal, or it
It
can be eaten if you chef it.
What if it wasn't? What if it was a baby and it grew on Shabbos?
Doesn't change that much.
And how much does a fruit change?
Well, it's the difference between being ripe and not ripe.
No, even if it started not ripe and it's still not ripe, it still grew. Understand?
Okay. But that's the process of growing. You're talking about a fruit on a tree. You're not talking about something that's sitting on your kitchen table that isn't ripe yet.
No, I'm not talking about that.
You're talking about on the tree. It's on the tree.
On the tree.
It's still a growing process. That's part of what it does on a tree.
Yeah, but an animal, why is an animal that grows also not? Also,
I think it's always growing.
animals always growing?
It's always producing milk. It's always laying eggs. It's always doing something.
Well, the truth is the cells of an animal and of a human being, for that matter, are always changing.
Yeah, it's
So
always,
there's waste, and then there's what we eat, and it becomes part of us, and all that.
they split. But they didn't know that back then.
It is an interesting question. Definitely an interesting question.
Because it's not getting better, it's getting worse.
How does it get worse?
It's dying.
Not dying.
Animals don't really get better, they get worse.
It's not connected to its source.
Why does that be connected to its source? If when the nutrients become a fruit, that's nolad, that's something new. Why is the grass becoming an animal not something new?
That's the thing. It's considered halachically connected to the ground, right?
It's not connected. Nobody said it's connected to the ground. It's considered to be growing from the ground. It's not
Right.
connected to the ground. You can take an animal to outer space. They took a monkey and put it on Sputnik or whatever it was. But it grows from the ground.
That crap up.
I don't know. This is a good question. I think it's the first time I've heard the question in my 20 years or so of learning this Gemara, this halacha, on and off. Good question.
Don't make it a homer.
Not authorized to make it a chumrah. It says in Shulchan Aruch that it's allowed, so it's allowed. The question is why. I'll answer your question with another question. It's not really an answer, but I'll just tell you that this halacha that it says here, the Magen Avraham questions it and does not understand it. The Magen Avraham says that the amount of the fruit that grows on Shabbos should become nullified in the rest of the fruit. Make sense? How much can it be already? Very small amount. It should be nullified
So what
in
makes it
well
permissible?
over 1 in 60. Now, the argument can be made, listen carefully, put on your thinking caps. The argument can be made that it should not be nullified because it's a davar sheyesh loy matirin. Who remembers what a davar sheyesh loy matirin means?
If you can
You wait and it will be permissible.
eat the upper Shabbat, so you can wait.
Exactly. The rule is that something will become permissible later is not nullified even in 1,000. So you have a little bit of this fruit, which will become permissible after Shabbos. So it should not be nullified even in 1,000. The thing is, the Magen Avraham points out that this rule, that a davar sheyesh lo matirin is not bodily even in 1,000, only applies when the object that is a davar sheyesh lo matirin has a exists as a separate entity before it became nullified. In other words, let's take the example that we discussed, I think, last time. You have an egg. The egg was born on Shabbos, or Yontif for that matter. It's muktzah. It got mixed into 1,000 other eggs. Let's talk about Yontif. Shabbos you can't cook anyway, so what's the difference? On Yontif, it got mixed into 1,000 other eggs. Can't eat any of them. Because that egg that's mixed in is going to become permissible after Yontif. So wait, big deal. Okay, but there was already an egg. It was already a forbidden egg, and it got mixed in. However, if the Davar Sheish Matirin never had a separate identity, as soon as it came into the world, it immediately became nullified, not muktzah, became nullified, so then it can be nullified. And I'll give you an example of this. We're learning a lot tonight. So if you have fruit that somehow the juice leaks out of the fruit. You have grapes pile, and the weight of the grapes, they weigh
off the vine or separated?
Off the vine, they're in the vat. And just because of the weight, they press against each other, and some of it collects on the bottom. So that is called mashkin shezav. Liquids that drip out of fruit is forbidden on Shabbos. You can't drink it, because if you could drink it, you might actually squeeze it.
I don't know.
Now you do. Now, what if you have a barrel of wine, and there are some grapes in the wine? Some grapes.
But it's nullified.
And on Shabbos, those grapes burst open because of the law of diffusion. I think the water has to stay equal all around. Okay, so it bursts open, and the grapes will release whatever was in them into the rest of the vat. That liquid is a davar sheyesh lo matirin, because it came out of a fruit on Shabbos, and after Shabbos it's going to be allowed. Now it should be forbidden. So it should make the whole vat forbidden, because it's even in 1,000 not nullified. No. Allah says because as soon as it came into existence, it was nullified. It never got a status of a davar sheish lo matirin. It never got a status because it was never separate. Then it can't be nullified. So it's not like the egg that already got the status of a forbidden egg. It was never a separate entity. Coming back to our case,
Separate
the
means
fruit,
away from the tree or the vine or whatever.
separate means separate, like something visible, something visibly separate item. Like the egg, you can pick it up before it got mixed up. Pick it up, look at this egg. Born on Shabbos. No, the grape was in the vat. It went straight out. It burst open, and there was. I'm talking about where there's already one in the vat, and now there's other grapes in the vat, and they burst on Shabbos, and what comes out of them gets mixed immediately into the rest of the vat. So that's not davar sheish lo matirin. That is nullified, because the wine was never a distinct entity before it got nullified. So the Magen Avraham asks, the amount of the fruit that grew on Shabbos never had a separate entity. It's just mixed in to the rest of the fruit, totally indiscernible from the rest of the fruit, and therefore it should be nullified. The principle of davar sheyesh lo matirin should not make a difference. It should be nullified. He stays with the question on this Ramah. So, even though I'm not answering your question, Yosef, if we accept the Magen Avraham's opinion, then there is no question, because neither is the animal muktzah, nor is the fruit muktzah. So, at least according to the Magen Avraham, it's not a question. Even though according to the Ramah, it is. Yes? Question? No. Okay. My friends, at long last.
I have a question. If
Yes.
we don't drink the juice from the fruit, are we allowed to serve it with the juice? Because when you leave fruit in the refrigerator, it leaks out. So can you serve it that way? Because then you can't technically separate it on Shabbos. So can you serve it that way? Because if you serve it that way, people might squeeze the fruit to get more juice.
Why can't you separate the fruit? It's good fruit that you want.
Yeah, but you're separating the good from the bad
You can separate good from the bad for immediate use.
and throw away the bad.
Yeah, why not?
But then can you serve it? My question that way
What way?
with the juice that leaked out.
Probably not.
So it has to be removed. I'm asking because
Probably not. Yeah. It would seem not. There is a question, by the way, of, when you serve grapefruits, or you eat grapefruits for that matter. So usually there's like a pool of liquid in the bottom of the, you know what I mean? You use your spoon, and then there's leftover stuff. It's a question if you're allowed to drink that, or is it like liquid that came out of the fruit on Shabbos? Zalman discusses that. I think he says it's okay, because he says it's considered part of the fruit itself. It's not like a separate entity. It's like part of the whole thing. Okay, we're moving on to the Alter Rebbe, number 5. I'm just going to read the English. Those that have the English good, it's not in there.
Oh, yeah, it's the next. Did he? What's the
It's
status of that volume?
unpublished. It's unpublished.
Well, what's the status of it?
I don't know. Supposedly it was sent to the printer, but for now it's not there. So
That's online.
it's not online. No, it's not online.
It's not on there either?
I sent it out. You have it in your
Yeah,
inbox,
yeah.
but it's not on the internet. Okay, one who shech slaughters on Shabbos for a chodesh yesh b'sakana, a mortally ill person. A well person bar can eat from it while it's raw without salting it. All he needs to do is wash it, as is explained in Yardei 67, because forbidden to salt on Shabbos is explained in 7-21. Even if the person fell sick on that day and on the previous day he hadn't intended at all to shecht it on the day, right on Shabbos, right? Nevertheless, it's not muktzah, forbidden to set aside, for the reason explained in 7-3-10, which is, like I told you, that you were not maktzah it be a dime. You didn't actively set it aside. It was just in a state of muktzah automatically. But one who cooks or does any of the malacha for a chodesh b'sakana, a mortally ill person, it's forbidden for a bari or a chodesh b'sakana, not an interestingly ill person, to benefit from it. This is a decree gzeir, lest he add in the malacha for him. This is not like shechita slaughtering, where one cannot add for the bari, since it's impossible to get a kazayas, which the chodesh needs, without shechting the entire animal. This is what I was saying before. We don't decree by shechita and say you can't eat from the shechita because you may shecht more, because it's a totally different action. You're not going to do it. Cooking, where you could cook more, cook less, that's when we differentiate. Even if you did this with a Gentile, whether for a chodesh yesh b'sakana or for a chodesh ein b'sakana, again, chodesh yesh b'sakana is a person who's dangerously ill. Chodesh ein b'sakana means a person who's seriously ill. He's a choila. He's sick, so that means he's confined to his bed. But ein b'sakana, there is no danger. It's forbidden for a bar to benefit from it, lest he add for him. But on Motzei Shabbos, it's mutter for the bar immediately, and he doesn't have to wait with the shiasa, since the Nachi did this beheter for the choila. Okay, my friends, I have to spell this out because the Machaber did not, and the Alter Rebbe does. I want to point it out. If a Gentile cooks for a sick person on Shabbos, we said nobody else can eat from it on Shabbos, because otherwise the Gentile may add for him. After Shabbos, however, people can eat from it right away if there's no Bishul Hakum issues, like either according to the or if it's something that's doesn't have a Bishul Hakum issue, it's something that's can be served, 1 second, it's not fit for the kings, or the fire was already on, whatever. The point is, you don't have to wait bichdei sheyasa. Normally, if a Gentile does work for a Jew, you can't benefit on Shabbos until after Shabbos, plus the amount of time it takes to do it. Over here, because the Goy didn't actually do it for you, there was no prohibition whatsoever. It's a decree. Maybe next time he'll do it for you. Okay, that's a decree. But we're not going to decree even for after Shabbos. Because after all, he didn't actually do it for you. On Shabbos, yes. After Shabbos, no. Question? No. When do we say this by other works besides baking and cooking? Because when Nachri cooked or baked on Shabbos for Chodesh, it's forbidden for bar even on Motzei Shabbos. Because of Bishul and Nachri, food cooked with Gentiles is explained in Siman 113 of Yardei. All right. Yes? I thought there was passing like the Rashba that we do say the rules of Bishul Akum afterwards. What about the kalim? What about the utensils? The guy cooked on Shabbos. He was allowed to.
He said it was true.
And it's Bishul Akum for everybody else, even on Shabbos, and certainly after Shabbos. Even for the person himself, according to the Rash, but it's Bishul Akum after Shabbos. What about the pot? Does the pot have to be kosher or not?
I'm going to say no. Because we said that only if a Jew cooks on Shabbos, it was mutter. I mean, it was forbidden just for himself, but no one else. So why would it?
Whoa. I can't let that pass. If a Jew cooked on Shabbos, it's forbidden for
himself.
Everyone.
Oh, I thought it was just himself.
No.
How could a Jew?
But the pot was just for him, forbidden. It's forbidden for everybody.
For everybody.
Okay.
Even if it was in a shogeg, even if he did it by accident. It's forbidden for him and for everybody.
You want a kosher?
It's permissible, so nothing was absorbed in the pot.
But how do you know?
That makes sense according to the Ra'ah, who says that it's actually permissible. The Rashba says it's not permissible. They're giving you permission to eat it temporarily.
But is the food permissible to begin with? Are we worried?
On Shabbos, it's permissible for that person.
No, but the food to begin with was good to go.
To begin with, before he cooked it. Once he cooked it, it became Bishul Akum. Food cooked by a Gentile. Okay, so here's the thing.
But the problem was just, sorry to interrupt, but the problem, a goy can cook for a Jew. The whole thing here is Shabbos and lighting the fire, those two aspects, right?
A goy cannot cook for a Jew during the week. It's called Bishul Akum.
Goys cook for Jews all the time in restaurants. They just can't light the fire.
Exactly. Talking about if you lit the fire.
Yeah, that's why I said those two aspects, lighting the fire and
don't if you lit the fire.
I don't know.
I'm telling you. We're talking about the
Lighting.
goy lit the fire. The goy lit the fire, the goy did the cooking, beginning to end.
I don't know the answer.
Okay, so actually, it's another machlekes. And some say, yes, you have to kasher the pot. And some say, no. L'maisa, it is better to kasher the pot. But Bavadia brings that there is some room for leniency, taking into account two things. First of all, there is an opinion in halacha that Bishul Akum in general does not include anything absorbed in pots. There's an opinion that says that Bishul Akum only applies to the actual food, and any absorption in pots is no big deal. Now, we don't pass like that opinion, but bearing in mind that according to the Ra'ah, there is not even a Bishul Akum issue. The Ra'ah says once the Chachamim allow it, they allow it for everybody, and even after Shabbos and whatever. So you can rely on the Ra'ah at least in terms of the absorption in the pots. So that's something to be aware of. With no further ado, we continue with number 6. One who plucks a fruit that was unripe for a choila on Shabbos, it's also for a boy because of muktzah. Even if he got sick before Shabbos and he intended to pluck it on Shabbos from before Shabbos, I don't know, this translator has to do a better job. Because achana, preparation, doesn't help at all by mechubra, things connected to the ground, and similar things which continue to grow on Shabbos. Okay, listen to the next line. But preparation does help for fully ripe fruit, which isn't growing anymore, though it's...
Hi. I was wondering if you could just read from the Hebrew and translate it. It's kind of hard to follow just reading the English.
But do you even have the Hebrew?
Yes, I have the Hebrew. So it would just I think, be better.
Okay.
I mean, I have both, but
Does that help?
Okay, I mean, I don't have it in one text. So I guess I could.
Translator from Pirchei Shoshana was moonlighting here.
I could. Okay, but that's it for today anyway in the Alter Rebbe. But for next time, I could go back to that system. Okay.
That's the version that they took the printer in?
No, this is my own.
Oh, it's your version. Oh, so you're making fun of yourself.
I am.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's what the Alter Rebbe says. So first of all, he mentions again the opinion of the Ramah. It's interesting that usually the Alter Rebbe sticks with the Magen Avraham very tight. It's very rare that the Alter Rebbe does not follow the Magen Avraham. Here he sticks with the Ramah, not with the Magen Avraham. Meaning to say that the fruit that continued to grow on Shabbos is muktzah. Even though the Magen Avraham argues, well, it should be nullified. It's not a davar sheish matirin because it never got a separate entity, like we said. Nevertheless, the Alter Rebbe sticks with the Ramah that it is forbidden. Not clear to me why. Another point he says is, if the fruit was not growing, it was already ripe. So then it depends if you intended to pluck it before Shabbos or not. If you knew that you have a sick person in your house and you suspect that maybe the doctor is going to say he needs a fresh mango, so you already had it in your mind, so then it's not muktzah. And another person can eat it because it's not muktzah. And there's no decree. He's not gonna pluck an extra mango for you. That's a totally separate action. Like we said, same like shechita. But if he didn't expect it, so then it's muktzah. So now I'm going to ask you a question. Why is it muktzah? When it should be like the animal that is not muktzah when it's shechted. An animal that is shechted on Shabbos, we said, is not muktzah. Because on Shabbos it changed from being an animal to being meat. The fact that it was muktzah before Shabbos, you didn't actively make it muktzah. It was just in a state of muktzah. So why is it different when it comes to plucking a fruit? You didn't make the fruit muktzah. It grew as muktzah. And as soon as it's plucked, it should be non-muktzah.
Because it doesn't change its form. It's always the same thing.
So what? It changed.
A lemon, no matter how big or
the
small.
reason, I understand that, but the reason it's muktzah is because it's attached to the ground. Attached to the ground, you can't use it. Once it's detached from the ground, you can use it. So just because it's the same thing, so what? Its status changed. Why can't it change? I can't really expect you guys to figure it out. But the Beis Yosef gives the following answer. Listen carefully to the Beis Yosef's answer. The Beis Yosef says, if a person does not shecht an animal before Shabbos, that doesn't mean he's pushing the animal aside. That just means he doesn't have a shochet. He doesn't have a knife. It didn't occur to him to shecht it. It's very complicated to shecht an animal. So that's not called pushing it aside. However, if you pass your mango tree before Shabbos, and there's a ripe mango, and you don't pick it, it's very easy to pick a mango or anything else. So that's considered an active haktsa'ah. That is like actively pushing it aside, and that stays the whole Shabbos. You understand? Even though you didn't take it and push it away, like you took the fresh apricots and you put them on the roof. That's it. I'm drying you. I'm not eating you, right? Or what else did we say? Is acts to be a dime? What else? The candle. You lit the candle on the candlestick. I'm not using you. You're designated for the candle, whatever. All right? You didn't do that. You didn't do an action, but you did an inaction when you could have easily done an action to change it. That's considered like an active pushing away.
Can you have intention to pick it on Shabbos?
Yes, you can if you have a sick person. You can't just intend to pick on Shabbos in a forbidden way.
Yeah.
That's like intending to sin. We don't allow that. But if you have a sick person or you suspect you may have a sick person and then therefore you plan on doing it, then yes, it would not be a muktzah. That's correct.
Can you shake the tree and let it fall?
You cannot shake a tree on Shabbos.
I'm asking. I don't know. Whatever you
Can't shake a tree. It's certainly not with the intention of knocking off the fruit. Okay, my friends. With no further ado, we move on to the handout that I gave you.
Yalkut.
Yalkut Yosef. Sorry. Okay, the Yalkut Yosef has quite a long discussion about Maaseh Shabbos, about benefiting from Shabbos labor, with a lot of chidushim, a lot of interesting novel ideas, and therefore I decided to go through it and to share some of them with you. Okay, so first of all, he brings down a machlokes as to the reason why Maaseh Shabbos is forbidden. Why is it that work done on Shabbos, you cannot benefit from that item? Well, what's the reason for it? Rashi says, "Shelo yehena mimeleches iser." Simple. We don't want you to benefit from a forbidden work. According to the Rambam, it's a knas, it's a punishment. Did Navera, I'm going to punish you, and you're not allowed to benefit from it. It seems very similar. One is that you shouldn't benefit from a forbidden action, and one is we're punishing you for doing the forbidden action. The difference between them seems slight. However, we are going to see there are a few examples where there is a difference, halachically. And very simply, even before we continue, is if the malacha that was done did not change the object that you did it with. For example, you carried it from inside to outside, outside to inside, for amot in the public domain, whatever it was, you did a Torah violation with it, but you didn't change it. So if you say it's shelo yehena mimlechas iser, you shouldn't benefit from the forbidden action, there's no benefit here. It's the same item. If you say it's a knas, it's a punishment, well, the fact is you did a prohibited work with this thing. I'm going to punish you. We're not going to let you benefit. Even though it's the same item, it doesn't make a difference. Punishment. Yes.
How do you differentiate between work and just doing something that's totally mukser? Like you're saying, moving something from outside inside. If it starts to rain and you bring in your bicycle from outside inside, it didn't change.
With an Erev, without an Erev?
Outside your house to inside your house.
With an Erev or without an Erev?
With an Erev.
Without an Erev. Okay, go ahead.
No, with an Erev. I mean,
with an Erev, okay, fine.
I mean, I understand, some people ride bikes for on Shabbos. They just leave it on the floor. But
what's the question? If there's an Erev, you didn't really do a malach.
Something that was designated mukser, and you needed to do some form of work in order so it wouldn't be destroyed. So you're benefiting in that respect. Like I said, it's raining outside. You forgot something outside. And now you're bringing it inside. It didn't change its status, but you benefited.
What's your question? If you did a muktzah violation, are you allowed to benefit from that thing? Is that your question?
Correct.
So, in general, muktzah is a rabbinic violation. When it comes to rabbinic violations, if you did it by accident, you can benefit even on Shabbos. If you did it on purpose, you cannot benefit till after Shabbos, but after Shabbos you can. So in answer to your question, you brought in the bike or any other muktzah item. So if you did it on purpose, you can't benefit on Shabbos, but you can benefit after Shabbos. I don't know how you're going to benefit from a bike on Shabbos anyway, but whatever. After Shabbos, it's okay.
So that's considered a punishment?
To wait, have to wait.
You don't have to wait.
Till after Shabbos.
Till after Shabbos, yeah.
Why is it bike muktzah in the first place if some people ride it, they're allowed to? It's allowed for everybody.
I never understood
Even if you
that
choose
you
not
can
to
ride
do
a
it.
bike on Shabbos.
Yeah,
I don't know where the heck they're for riding bikes
I
came
don't
from.
either.
Said it was like
I was
It's like a
stroller,
horse.
like pushing the stroller.
And there's
Who
no
says?
brake. No, I heard it was like a horse, and if it breaks down, you may come to fix it. So
Yeah, you.
That's the
have to fix it,
standard.
right?
That's the standard halacha. That's the
That's
standard halacha. That's what it says in Shemir Shabbos.
That's what I learned.
That you cannot ride a bike in Shabbos.
Can or cannot?
Cannot.
no, you may come to fix it
Because you may come to fix it, and items that travel very quickly, listen to this, you may end up going outside of the tchum without realizing, which you could say could apply to other scooters
There's a
and the like.
25,000 a month.
2,000 a month.
I don't allow it personally.
But you get 2,000.
It's 2,500
I
a
think
month. I
it's
thought.
certainly not a
2,000?
Shabbos friendly way.
But that's
Shabbos
2,000 in both
appropriate
ways.
way.
You have to like.
And
sleep
maybe it's
somewhere.
even forbidden based on this
I think you have
concept
to
that
sleep,
something
and then
that
you
travels
have
fast, you
2,000
may end up
back.
going outside of the floor
Where's that
without
from?
realizing. It's brought down. It's brought down. In that discussion about bikes. If you look it up in the Shemir Shabbos.
I once told someone that because you might come to fix it.
Yeah, that's what everyone learned.
Oh, this is what he told me. Because it might break down, it's not actually. What someone told me like this. It's not actually what's it. Even if it's not the whole. He said the whole concept of coming to fix it. He said whatever. Anyways, he pushed off. But he said if the chain falls off or whatever, then you're carrying something that's not usable, and then that's so you wouldn't just leave your bike on the middle of the street if something happened, a flat tire, or when you can't ride it anymore, or the chain. Then it would become what's it. So it's
Okay.
But that's when it becomes, I always learned that it became muksa if you couldn't ride it, like the chain coming off.
Yeah.
It's just the same. You have to leave the muksa there. You can't take it with you.
So
But what is the heter? But you said
it's a decree against muktzah. Is that what it is?
That's what I heard.
Maybe.
Where's
Sorry?
the?
but where's this heter that
I don't know.
some people are?
I mean,
I-
bikes you don't usually see the.
I very rarely,
Very rarely. see
Very
the-
rarely.
Right.
but I have seen it.
Yeah.
Right.
And
I've
there
seen
are
some
also
people.
seen it.
But you need the arrow.
Much
It has to be an arrow, right?
I've seen that.
Yeah, I don't know what the heter is.
I saw.
I've only seen Sephardim. No, really, mamish. No offense to anybody. That's
I've
really
seen some
who they
Ashkenazim.
happen to be.
I've seen some Ashkenazim.
They're not religious.
No.
No.
They'll go to shul with their bike.
I'm talking
I've
about people,
seen that.
they go
No,
to
that's
shul
what
with their
they're-
bikes.
that's
Yeah,
No,
but then you're
no,
scared
we're
it's gonna
not
get
talking
stolen.
about
You gotta lock it
No,
up.
we're
You
not
gotta
talking
carry
about
a key.
bikes, we're not
You
even
gotta.
accepting
It's either allowed or not allowed. I mean, it's not the conservative movement that gives you a pass for
But
transportation to synagogue. Doesn't work that way.
Yeah, I never understood where the heter would even.
Pedicabs?
I don't remember exactly what it is. He allowed,
What is
allowed it to go to shul, something like that. And from that, a certain rabbi that I know of, he allowed rollerblades. He rollerbladed to shul. The rabbi.
Who's this? Which
Yeah.
You know what? He wants to get-
He actually supposedly still does it. He's one of the previous rabbis of Safra.
Yeah, I know.
What's
Belankry.
Rabbi Lankry. Rollerblades to shul.
I have heard of that heter. It's not so different than a scooter
Right.
because there's not really much that can break there. But
On
although
Yom
it's
Tov,
fast
you can do it.
travel, I don't know if I would recommend it.
Yom
But
Tov is-
Where's the
depending
fast
on
travel? Like not tomorrow.
What about a skateboard?
no
What's that? How did that?
Skateboard.
No, it's the same thing. If it
Sounds
breaks,
like
you're gonna carry it.
New decree.
new decree, new decree. I don't know. It's a new concept, the whole thing of these kinds of transportation. You don't make new decrees to things that existed before, but if a new thing comes up, I'm not so sure. Anyway, I don't know.
But the Tchum one, is that something that's another reason? Is that a recognized reason or just something?
It's brought down on the Shemir Shabbos. He brings it down as one of the reasons.
Who brought it down?
Shemir Shabbos of no worth. I don't know if he's quoting a Shlomo Zalman or if
Shlomo
it's Zalman. I don't know.
That you may inadvertently go outside the Tchum.
Exactly, because you're traveling so fast. Okay.
Does that mean you're not gonna be able to stop in time when you see the tzchum?
No, you're just not going to realize. Not going to realize. Okay.
Wouldn't that
So-
apply to walking then as well?
Sorry?
Wouldn't that apply to walking? You might just walk too far.
Oh, we're not going to say you can't walk. You just
No, what I'm
be
saying,
careful.
What's it, avoid walking,
It's much faster. when
Is
you're
there? Do we have any
traveling.
Tchum issues locally, or is everything pretty
Absolutely.
much? What's not
Cannot
connected?
go
The
from
Hullover Bridge, for
Hullover
example.
Bridge and the 96th Street Causeway. Can't go to North Miami from Bay Harbor. Can't go across the 163rd Bridge either from Sunny Isles to
The
Eastern
Lehman
Shores.
Causeway.
Lehman Causeway. You could.
I travel on Lehman Causeway all the time.
Why-
Because they go to
What's the
Rabbi
lehman?
Moore.
What's different about the lehman?
Even
goes over
Causeway
the
has an
water.
Eruv. The Eruv makes it considered like it's,
Leaning causeway goes over what?
so what?
It's the only way to.
Uh,
It's the only
Has
way
an
to
air,
get
has
to
a
the
string.
shore.
Oh, okay.
Is it string on it?
I don't even know.
So the string makes it considered like it's part of the city. You know what I mean? It's like it's part of. Like, imagine it's a wall. So therefore it's not like out of the city. It's considered part
In
of the
Israel,
city.
they put the soda bottle things, so you can see them all the way around. Never seen that?
No.
In Efrat, they have it all the way around. They have the string, and then they have.
But they use those for target practice.
Yeah.
Frats in the territory.
I think it's a differentiate probably between the Arab, because it's
The Arab and the Arab.
No, because it's all the same land.
Okay, I don't know. Okay, number 2, there is a reason to be lenient by boirer. That means if a person did boirer on Shabbos, there is reason to be lenient and allow him to benefit from that stuff. He made a salad, and when he was cutting it up, he took the bad out of the good instead of the good out of the bad. So there's reason to be lenient and to allow the consumption of that salad. Here are the 3 arguments that Bavadia brings. First of all, well, it's actually Yitzchak, no? What's his name?
Yosef.
Yitzchak Yosef. But a lot of it is based on his father's teachings. Firstly, the item itself did not change. According to Rashi, it's only a problem if you're benefiting from the, malach. But if the item didn't change, it's not really, perhaps it's not a benefit. Along the same lines, you could say that it's only a benefit if there was no way you could come to that outcome without a forbidden labor, like cooking. There's no way you can get a cooked product without cooking it. But over here, there's 2 ways to get a salad that's edible. You could take the good from the bad, or the bad from the good. It so happens you took the bad from the good. You didn't do it right. But you could have done it in a permissible way. So maybe that's not considered a benefit because you could have come to the same accomplishment even without this malacha. And last but not least, this is a famous idea that if a person did a forbidden boirer, he should put it back, mix it back in, and that
It's
way
easy with salad, but when bones.
put the
It's a little
bone
bit
back,
different.
whatever, because that way you're not going to benefit because you undid what you accomplished, and then you do it in a permissible way. Anyway, his psak is you can use these leniencies if it was by accident. You say you forgot, you didn't pay attention, whatever. On purpose, it's not so simple, but by accident, you can rely on these ideas. Okay. I wrote in parentheses, there's room to be lenient even without putting it back. It's better to put it back, but it's room to allow it even without that. Excuse me. Number 3, if the one who did the Isra is a public machal on Shabbos, there's reason to say that it should be asu b'chdei sheyasa. In practice, a one-time occurrence, one need not be strict. Okay, here's the argument. If you remember, we said that we're not going to make if a person did work on Shabbos, so it's permissible for other people after Shabbos, and they don't have to wait b'chdei sheyasa the amount of time it took him to do it. Why? Because that's only by a goy.
He didn't do it.
Because if you allow him to benefit, then the next time you'll tell him to do it again. But a Jew, first of all, you would never tell a Jew to do it. And second of all, he wouldn't listen to you. So that second argument cannot be made if it's a public Shabbos violator. You understand? Because he would do it, and we know he would do it, unfortunately. It's not like a Shomer Shabbos who slipped up once. He's not going to do it again. I'm not going to worry that he's going to do it again. But a person who is a flagrant Shabbos violator, if you allow people to benefit right away, yeah, he might do it again for them to benefit right away. So therefore, you have to wait until b'chdei sheyasa. In practice, a one-time occurrence, one need not be strict. the argument can be made that since the Chachamim made the rule that you can benefit from the actions of a Jew right after Shabbos, maybe it's just a rule. They didn't change it for public Shabbos desecrated regular people. So in practice, if it's a one-time thing, you can be lenient. But if it's a general thing that this person does, like a bakery, for example, stays open on Shabbos, you know what I mean? You shouldn't, at the very least, you shouldn't use it b'chdei sheyasa. Although he says later that really you should really not, anything made on Shabbos, if it was made for a certain person, you should never benefit from it. Chiddush, again. If it was made on Shabbos by a public Shabbos desecrator, right? Again, not a person who keeps Shabbos generally. A person who keeps Shabbos generally, if he violated it once, we're not going to make it forbidden even for the people he did it for, right? Because it's such an unusual thing that we're not going to suggest he's going to do it again. People don't sin for other people. Even if they sin for themselves, not for other people. But a person who's a public Shabbos desecrator, so therefore he doesn't care, unfortunately. So therefore we are afraid he's going to do it again for those people. And therefore there's reason to say that just like it's forbidden for him forever, that's the halacha, it's forbidden for those people forever also, because he did it for them. And that's actually his psak, that you cannot benefit. Let's say in Israel, right, where they have factories, unfortunately, that might stay open on Shabbos. You cannot buy those products anytime, even a week later, a year later, because it's like the person who did it can never benefit. The people he did it for, which is all the public that he wants to sell it to, you can't benefit ever.
The ones he made on Shabbos.
The ones he made on Shabbos. Now, if you don't know,
Tuesday or on Shabbos.
So if you don't know, so Meikar Adin, the letter of the law, you can be lenient and go by the majority, but it's better to be strict, he says, especially if the boycott will encourage him to keep Shabbos. This is the power of the free market. The Haredim and the religious Jews in general in Israel have a very strong buying power. More and more, because they have a lot of children, Baruch Hashem. So if they don't buy from these companies that are Machal Shabbos, it can force the companies to keep Shabbos.
But the other people, the ones buying, that would have bought from a guy who made on Shabbos, don't care that he's making on Shabbos, or else they wouldn't have bought it.
I understand, but eventually they'll see there's such a big consumer base that is not buying. Maybe they'll have to start keeping Shabbos.
But that's in a place where there's the boycott power, in a regular small town someplace. The guys open that Shabbos.
Yeah, small town, yeah. Yeah, he's talking about like a company.
I'm not going to buy from someone that I knowingly made it on Shabbos.
Correct.
Right? So the ones who would are the ones that don't care.
Right.
Just like the baker himself.
Yeah.
How do they get
Well, he's
around,
talking about like companies.
Like
you know what I
companies,
mean?
like big
how do they get around the fact that the airport is open on Shabbos in Israel? And there's a lot of activity going on during the airport, which I'm sure you're going to benefit from on Motzei Shabbos if you take a plane. Yeah, they're refueling gas tanks, cleaning, all that stuff. That clearly they're doing in anticipation of flights that are going to be taking off Motzei
The
Shabbos,
government is
which is very busy. No, I'm just saying.
but it's a business, it's profit. I mean,
that's the whole.
So what?
But you're still benefiting from work that
It's
Jews
all-
have done on Shabbos after Shabbos
That's an
by
interesting
using the
question.
airport.
That's an interesting question. He doesn't touch upon that at all. Could be in his times, so when this was written, it wasn't happening.
Electricity, same thing there.
Electricity is an issue in Israel.
Electricity is another issue. We'll discuss that. Electricity is another issue. But this does, call to mind what he says about not going on a bus that comes right after Shabbos, and
It
he
was
had
fueled
to
up, and
drive.
to-
He had to drive on Shabbos to bring it to this point.
or getting a taxi to take you.
I never
Right.
thought of
If
it.
he's
it's
going to
Erev
have to drive.
Shabbos, if it's a yid, if he's going to have to drive
That's
back.
also true. Going to
You know
make
how
him
many
drive
people take
back.
buses after Shabbos?
Or, for that matter, if he's if it's right after Shabbos and you order him and he's going to have to drive on Shabbos to get there. Either way, it would seem to be a problem. I don't know if you should take flights that are right after Shabbos.
That's like the busiest
That's when
time.
they-
The
you
Motzei
don't have-
Shabbos
you don't
flights are
have no
loaded.
choice.
Yeah, but
Allah flies all their
Who's
North
taking-
American
Who's
flights.
taking a flight? What's the Shabbos? It takes at least, let's say, half an hour to get to the airport.
Yeah,
You have to
but-
be there
but
2 hours ahead of
I
time.
understand, but during Shabbos, there were things that were done at the airport that for
You
sure
have to prepare the airplane.
are being prepared. You got to prepare the planes, you got to prepare
You
the
gotta put
fuel,
the
you got to
fuel, you
prepare the
gotta-
luggage.
2.5 hours is enough.
You're talking about an Israeli plane?
That's a minimum.
No, I'm talking about any planes. It's benefiting from
They have
work done
Goyim,
by
No,
they
not
have-
any
by
plane.
they have
Not
Goyim
any
do it though.
Your plane.
your plane.
You can't
You don't know
worry
that
about
your
all the
plane.
planes.
Right,
But-
right.
Your
It's
plane.
not an El Al
But-
thing. It's
but-
just an
but-
airport issue.
But by the Goyim working for the airport, it's almost like he has a stake in the company. He's not working
Goyim,
for the
halavai there'd be Goyim.
There's not. They're
It's
not
like-
They're
going
not
it's
Goyim, that's
it's
the
like how
problem.
the-
I mean, what, you don't
Hello,
have
talking about
Goyim
Ben Gurion.
inspecting passports and
Talking about Ben Gurion Airport. I'm talking about
Gurion for sure.
Miami Airport.
I'm talking about the Goyim work at the.
Not in Israel.
Catholics, Muslims.
What?
In Israel, you
Yeah,
kidding?
How many?
Any sensitive job, there's
Mostly
no
Jews.
way.
What
that
do
You have
mean?
Ramley that's right next to the airport.
Yeah,
How many people work at the airport? No.
Most teachers. It would be nice. It would be nice, but unfortunately, not
I had
nice.
a similar shiloh with Winn-Dixon a few years ago. On Shabbos, they bake, but they
Yeah.
have the mishkiach in the kosher bakery. He turns on the,
How do you know
Bible
they make
light,
on Shabbos?
but they explained to me, question. When I called the Rebbeim that were involved in Hashgacha. They said what they do is, the mishkiach turns on the pilot light. If the pilot light goes out, there's no way for the goyim to turn it back on Shabbos. Someone, a yid has to come, and it's a mechanism that they only have a key or a combination or whatever, and they can't turn it on. But they do, and then the other thing that they told me was that they're not just baking for Yidden, they're baking
Right,
for
they're
goyim
making,
too.
and it's not Jewish owned
Well, no.
establishment.
I will say this though, it is discussed in Hilchas, something or other, that if it's a city that is mostly Goyim,
Yeah.
then you can buy right after Shabbos. If it's a city that's mostly Jews,
Oh, well.
you have to wait the amount of time it takes to bake.
What
So,
bothered me was that by allowing them to have a shgacha, by allowing them to bake on Shabbos, that hurts a yid who has a bakery, because he can't bake on Shabbos.
no, they're only allowed if they're baking for non-Jews.
For everybody.
Yeah, but
I'm
once they
saying,
bake,
that's, in general, the fact that you have a Winn-Dixie bakery is taking away business from Jewish bakeries. That's a general problem. The fact that they're doing it on Shabbos is not that issue per se.
Same kind of thing in Matzah Pesach. People can run to Winn-Dixie and they can load up on stuff, but the Yid isn't going to have time to open up and get stuff.
that's what bothered me.
Is that an issue
But
to
they just
supply
have the economic
the
thing.
That's what I'm saying. So what do we
bakery goods and stuff like that because they're taking away business from Jews?
If you can go to a Jew, you should give the Jew the business, but it being halachically
So
impossible.
his question is, how do you give hashgacha to a place that's taking the business away? I don't know. I don't know the answer.
Meaning it's not
I'm
allowed.
sure
I don't
some
know.
Jew owns a
I'm
farm.
not saying it's not allowed.
You're saying
Yeah, but it's
you're not saying it's not allowed. You don't know how to say. You don't know how to reconcile if they say yes. You're saying you don't know
No,
whether it says
I don't know. Because on the other hand, you are giving benefit to the Jewish population. You're making it easy.
But what
You're
supermarket
giving
is
them
open
quality.
for
You're
Shabbos?
giving them price. You know what I mean? These they're usually cheaper than the other places. So I don't know.
There's nowhere to buy food after Shabbos here.
I know in the Publix where I shop, it's across the street from a kosher store. And, years ago, people said to me, why don't you go to the management, tell them to put in a kosher bakery, whatever.
You should.
But I
Well,
never
not in that
did
one
it.
at
I
the
don't want to
shop
be
site.
the one. I don't want to be the one to,
Why don't they put
Take
all
away
the
from the
Pesach
kosher
stuff
store.
outside?
if they do it, they
They
do
don't
it.
have
but
a
I don't
kosher
wanna-
bakery in
wanna do it.
Surfside, do they?
No.
They had a rolling
They have
pin.
rolling pin and Kastner's. I mean, they sell baked goods. They don't
Yeah,
bake
yeah.
it themselves, but they sell it.
But-
Kosher land. I mean.
Yeah.
But Publix doesn't really.
No, they sell
things.
Kastner stuff from Miami Beach.
Most everything at Publix comes from Lakeland. They prepare it, package it, and ship it, and then they just stick it in their ovens.
Yes, correct. Okay,
Lakewood would be a problem. Lakewood is okay.
So we don't know it.
if it's a regular occurrence, did we say this already? It's a regular occurrence like a restaurant that's open on Shabbos, no one may benefit from it forever. Certainly not the people who it's done for, but even others, as it would otherwise be strengthening the hands of sinners and aiding their future sins. I went to Masada once, and the restaurant there had a funny kind of hechsher. So I asked them, what's this hechsher? They said basically we're kosher,
Yeah.
but we're open on Shabbos, so the Rabbanut won't give us a hechsher.
So we made
So we made our own basically, but it's kosher.
Yeah.
yeah.
So here we see that it's actually
Tel Aviv
not.
kosher.
It's actually not kosher. Because, like we said before, the person that bakes it, if they bake it for other people and they're a regular Shabbos violator, unfortunately, then it's forbidden for those people forever.
Is Coca-Cola?
Is it allowed to have like a non-Jewish partner to be taking over the store on Shabbat, or getting the whole benefit of whatever?
They talk about that
Star.
at the bathhouse.
There are ways to do it, yeah.
Even in
But
restaurants.
even in a restaurant, but it has to be without any marasayan. It has to be that he's a known partner, not a silent partner. It has to be a known partner, so people know. That's what they do with the what do they call the bagel stores? Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Even though they could be feeding Jews. Meaning it's just like any other non-kosher store.
It's considered non-kosher over Shabbos.
No,
Not non-kosher.
not kosher. Because then you have to kosher everything after
It's,
Shabbos.
it's considered
It's considered a non-Jewish owned company.
a
Actually.
non-Jewish home. Yeah.
At least they're eating kosher
At
food
the,
rather than not kosher food.
Football stadium
On
here,
Shabbos.
They even know
when
the
they
difference.
first,
I'm serious.
shortly after they opened, they had a kosher concession. And part of the deal was they had to charge the same amount that the Goyim charged for the non-kosher.
Wow.
Okay, so in other words, they couldn't give them a hamburger cheaper,
Wow.
whatever they're selling.
Doesn't
But
matter
it
if
had to
they're
be open on
$1 million
Shabbos.
for hamburger.
So, but how they get around it? They, Erev Shabbos, they changed all the signs, and they used different utensils. So on Shabbos, they have no hashgacha.
I
Doesn't
see.
say anything about kosher.
I
anything.
see. Interesting.
And what's the
Who
Shabbos?
is this?
Wow.
It's in the
At
marbles.
the football stadium here.
That's complicated, but that's interesting.
But if you want to do something, you can figure out what.
All right, number 5. When we speak about a person being a shogig, if he asked a chacham shita, chacham made a mistake, we mean that he's an expert in halacha. Otherwise, it's considered a mezid. Okay, we spoke about the fact that a person who asks a chacham, Torah scholar, and the Torah scholar made a mistake, gave him the wrong ruling, that is considered a shogig. It's considered like it's beyond his control. It's an accident. So the Yalkut Yosef says that's only if you asked a person who knows halacha. You can't just go into yeshiva and ask a bacher who's sitting there, or maybe even a koil guy sitting there for years, but he doesn't know halacha. He knows Gemara. He doesn't know halacha. That's not called a chacham shita. He's not a chacham, and this area is not a chacham. Because to be a chacham, you have to know halacha. So then his ruling is good enough to make it like a mistake. But if you ask a person who doesn't know halacha, that's like a mezid. It's pretty severe. That's the same as basically not asking anybody. It's deciding for yourself. It's pretty severe.
Even if the person, let's say, for example, says I'm positive.
Says what?
Let's say you ask
You're
a.
always puzzled when you do
The
that.
guy has
No. Let's say, for example, you go into a yeshiva and you ask one of the bakram that look an avrik. You go to ask an avrik that it knows,
He
Judaism.
looks the part.
Whatever, yeah.
He has to know halacha.
Huh?
Saying that he knows it is no different.
Like knows Allah, he doesn't.
But
He doesn't know halacha.
But if he says he knows
Everyone-
halacha,
everyone-
can
every
you
avrik
rely on it?
has
Or do you have to
most,
do a background check?
a good amount of halacha. Is he an expert like someone who's
Well, so that
question, though.
depends on the question you're asking. If you're asking him a question that is clear in Shulchan Aruch, and he's a kind of person who knows that, that's fine. But if you're asking him a complicated shaila, you know what I mean, where you have to compare one thing to another, he has to be the sort of person who can do that. That's what he's saying. Okay.
Years ago, Rabbi Swankin used to have the minion in his house. This minion. So it was sukkahs.
Still
and
downstairs.
I came in for shul, and he said, why don't you go to the sukkah? Make a l'chaim, or take some, there's some cake there. So I go in, a couple of bushram sitting around, and there's some mush on the table, so I pour a little bit to take. Bushram says, you can't have mush before chakras. I said, why not? So after I finished, I go into, and I said to Rabbi's wife, I said, please tell him I can't tell. What's something new? So he says, what do you want? He's a bacher.
Well, you certainly can't have a serious amount of
Amount of,
mashka
yeah.
before shachar, so before any davening.
Well, it makes it warmer dominant.
Also a less concentrated
Is there a
diet.
certain amount that's also, or is it for each person?
Anything is going to blur your mind. Or,
Anything before Shabbos.
I mean, in Shulchan Aruch there is an amount, but it says that nowadays we're not knocking on that because we don't have so much kavan anyway. So as long as you can think straight and speak straight.
How about if you're a Kohen?
One more machmar.
Because of Birkas Kohanim potentially.
Yeah, you'd have to wait. If a person opened a can based on the opinions that are lenient, one who is strict may eat from the contents. Right? You go by the opinions that you're not allowed to open a can on Shabbos. They go by the opinions that you are. They went ahead and opened it. You're allowed to eat from the contents of that can. Now, there's two reasons. First of all, the malacha was not done with that item. The malacha was done that allowed you to reach the item, but you didn't actually do the malacha with the item itself. So maybe that's not called yehana. Maybe it's not called a benefit from the malacha itself, because it's like a side benefit. And then there's another point which he discusses later at length, and we mentioned also in the past, that when a person is following a opinion that is recognized in halacha, even if it's not the final halacha, but it is an opinion in halacha, so you can perhaps rely on it b'di'evet to benefit from that stuff. Can't do it because we don't follow that opinion in halacha l'maisa, but b'di'evet you can rely on it, like we said before. What do we say it about? I don't know what we said it about. But for example, if let's say they heated up, yesh bishol achar bishol balach, right? You can't reheat liquids that was heated up and then cooled down. You can't reheat it on Shabbos. Some say ein bishol achar bishol balach, right? The Rambam says ein bishol achar bishol balach. So the argument can be made. Well, if the Rambam would do it in his kitchen,
You can benefit from
at least you should be allowed to eat from it. Stands to reason,
it.
right? So actually, that's what Yalkut Yosef paskins. The Alter Rebbe says different. The Alter Rebbe says you can only benefit from something which some allow, and even those that forbid say it's d'Rabbanan. If those that forbid say it's d'Oraisa,
Definitely.
and the halacha is like them, then you can't benefit even b'di'evet. So that's important, because now you have to know what's d'Oraisa, what's d'Rabbanan.
Oh, wait. I'm so sorry. The bishul, why wouldn't the Ostrom say it's Daras?
They would. That's why he would disagree. He would say you cannot benefit from yesh b'shalach from lach. Alter Rebbe.
Oh.
Alter Rebbe only uses that concept to benefit from the Rabbanan malach. It's a Rabbanan malach, and there's a machlekes, and some allow it, but you can benefit. All right, my friends, we have a lot more to learn. I thought we would finish this handout, but we did not. And I see there are some comments here. Marshall Living took us to eat there. Oh, yeah, that's a shame. Sada, I guess. I think the donuts at Dunkin' Donuts are not Chal Yisrael, even at the kosher Dunkin' Donuts. Yes, that's true. But they could be. They're just not because they are not. But they could be. Definitely not Chal Yisrael. Yeah, that's correct. All right, my friends. That's it for now. We are going to continue and learn next week. And the week after. The week after is Tisha B'Av, and we are not going to learn Tuesday and exactly Monday and Tuesday, both Tisha B'Av. I cannot do Wednesday that week. The week after that, we're going to have two classes. One of them is going to be in the Breslov Center, because there's a wedding here that's taking up the whole place. That's on August 7th. And the next week, I'm giving you another week off. So if you want to plan your away.
I needed something about to Israel.
I'm going to Israel.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
I need
Oh.
to fill in.
Okay. Leonardo.